At 2:14 a.m. in a remote sector of the Arizona-Mexico border, Agent Patrick Reeves scanned a dry wash through his thermal optic.
A cold shape, no heat, bloom. Not a body, not a vehicle.
He moved closer, rifle ready. 200 yards out, the thermal showed a motionless ring of cold. At 50 yards, he killed the thermal. His flashlight beam hit something that made no sense. 47 pairs of shoes, heel to toe in a perfect circle. Men's boots, women's flats, kids' sneakers. No footprints.
People don't walk out of their shoes. They don't arrange them like a clock face. There's no trail.
He circled the arrangement, sweeping the sand. Untouched, no drag marks, as if the shoes had materialized.
His training covered ambushes, false trails, decoy bundles. Not this. This wasn't right.
He photographed the circle from every angle. The shutter clicked in the silence like a gunshot. When he lowered the camera, the desert felt heavier. He knew he'd have to call it in, and he knew the answer wouldn't be the truth. He climbed into his patrol truck and keyed the radio. His voice came out steadier than he felt.
Dispatch, this is Reeves. I have a situation. A circle of shoes in the wash, 47 pairs, no tracks.
A long pause. Then Supervisor Reyes' voice crackled through, flat and unbothered.
Say again. Shoes.
47 pairs, men's, women's, children's, arranged in a perfect circle. No footprints anywhere.
Mark the GPS coordinates. Do not collect the shoes. Continue your patrol.
Do not collect. That's a direct violation of protocol. Any mass crossing indicator requires seizure and documentation. Supervisor, standard procedure says we collect all evidence. This is a potential mass crossing. I should secure the site.
I am aware of the procedure. Mark the GPS. That's an order. Reeves, Reyes out.
Patrick stared at the radio. The silence stretched. He marked the coordinates, put the truck in gear, and drove on into the night, the image of those shoes burning behind his eyes. The next morning, a recovery team reached the GPS point. The wash was empty and undisturbed. The team leader radioed, "Wash clear. No shoes, no prints, confirm the coordinates."
Impossible. I have the photos. They were right there.
Patrick demanded a debrief. He placed the camera on Reyes' desk and scrolled through the images.
Supervisor, 47 pairs of shoes in a perfect circle. This was not a trick of the light.
You were exhausted. The desert plays tricks. There's nothing to investigate.
He's covering it up. He doesn't even look at the pictures properly.
The report was filed as an anomalous signal. No follow-up. The matter was closed.
I know the shoes were real. And now I know the agency wants to pretend I never saw them.
He walked out into the blinding morning, the photographs a secret he could not unsee. Months slipped by. Patrick worked the sector alone, the shoe circle a splinter under his skin. He told no one. Then, in a dry tributary he'd crossed 100 times, the thermal gave off that same wrong geometry. A circle of cold.
Not again. The shoes vanished. I saw the empty wash. This can't be here.
He killed the engine and walked. The flashlight beam confirmed it. 47 pairs, same false precision, sand immaculate.
Cartels don't leave evidence. Pranksters can't erase their own tracks. And I am not tired enough to conjure a child's shoe.
He photographed the arrangement methodically, the flash bleaching the shoes into ghost shapes. This time, his hand didn't shake. The radio call was a formality. Reyes's voice, when it came, held the same flat seam. Mark the GPS. Do not collect.
They want to bury it. But this isn't going away. And neither am I.
He drove off, the coordinates joining the first in a private map of things that shouldn't exist. By sunrise, the wash would be empty again. But Patrick had stopped believing in coincidences. He started with the agency database. Every keyword he tried returned nothing. No mention of shoes, circles, or the number 47. He combed through old shift reports. Lots of sand, some footprints, zero shoes. It was as if the discoveries had been scrubbed. An old dispatcher, a man with 40 years of dust in his voice, had said, "The 47th thing, that was a running joke years ago." When Patrick pressed, the dispatcher's face closed like a steel shutter. "Forget I said anything, Reeves."
47 pairs isn't a joke, it's a code. and they're afraid of it.
He confronted Reyes in the station hallway, voice low, eyes hard. Someone else has seen this before. The agency knows.
Drop it. Reeves. You are chasing shadows. There's no file, no record, and no reason to keep digging.
Reyes leaned in close enough for Patrick to smell the coffee on his breath. The desert takes things. Let it take this.
He's not protecting protocol. He's protecting a secret. And I'm going to find out what it is.
That night, he added a second pin to his private map. The desert had spoken twice. Next time, he would be the one to answer. On a moonless night, in a wash he'd crossed twice that week, the thermal optic painted a shape he'd memorized. 47 cold dots in a perfect ring. He killed the engine and stepped into the silence. The desert didn't feel empty anymore. It felt compressed, as if the darkness had a pulse.
There it is. The same impossible arrangement. But tonight, the air is wrong. Something else is here.
A pressure settled on his shoulders, not physical but primal. His body recognized a threat his mind couldn't name. The hair on his neck lifted.
Move anyway. Count the pairs. Make sure the number hasn't changed.
He circled the arrangement, counting under his breath. Men's boots, women's flats, tiny sneakers. 47. Precisely 47.
Always 47. Never more, never less. Like an incantation said backwards.
The watching pressure tightened until Patrick's lungs locked. He knew, without knowing how, that turning his back would be a fatal error.
This can't be protocol. Mark and forget while something out here waits for the dark. I can't keep doing this.
He backed all the way to the truck, not taking his eyes off the circle until the door slammed shut. Only then did the presence recede, leaving a silence deeper than before. A week later, at a station retirement gathering, Senior Agent Cole caught Patrick's eye across the dusty parking lot. The old man's gaze was too knowing.
You've seen them, haven't you? The shoes.
He knows. He's seen them too. How many times has he found that circle and walked away?
Cole had been on the line since 1971. He'd walked every wash in the sector. His voice was gravel and old secrets.
Since 1973, there's been a file. Sealed. Every agent who finds the circles gets told the same thing. Mark and move on.
What happened in 1973?
I don't know. And you don't want to. The file is closed. The number 47. Nobody alive knows what it means anymore.
A file sealed for decades. Everyone who knows the meaning is dead or silenced.
Let the dead keep their shoes, Reeves. That's the best advice I can give.
He's warning me, but warnings aren't answers. There's a truth buried in those circles, and whether I want it or not, it's not done with me.
2 more years passed. The circles came and went. Always 47, always vanishing. Patrick began to see them as a summons rather than a discovery. On a night with no moon, in a wash, he had stopped photographing. He knelt beside the arrangement and made a choice.
The protocol was a lie. The only way to understand was to break it.
He reached for the smallest shoe, a child's sneaker, bleached by years of sun, and closed his fingers around the canvas. The instant the sole cleared the sand, the temperature dropped. His breath clouded in front of him. A low, rhythmic sound pressed up through the ground. Not a vibration, but a pulse, like an immense heart beating once. Then again.
It knows. Whatever owns the circle, it felt the weight shift.
He didn't wait. He ran, gripping the shoe so hard the edges cut his palm, the heartbeat pounding faster behind him. He reached the truck, threw himself inside, and locked the doors. The sound stopped, but the shoe was in his hand. For the first time in 5 years, the protocol had been broken. The desert noticed. He held the shoe under the dome light. A child's sneaker, worn through the toe, the canvas stiff with old dust. It smelled like nothing at all. He placed it on the passenger seat and started the engine. The rest of his shift crawled, every shadow outside the window pressing in.
The mirrors stayed empty, but the skin between my shoulder blades never stopped tingling.
At home, he parked, locked the truck, and went inside. He checked the shoe was still there through the glass. It was. The next morning, the truck was still locked. The shoe was gone. No broken glass, no Jimmy marks, just an empty seat, still warm from the night before.
Impossible. I locked the doors. I checked, I saw it last night.
He circled the truck, heart thudding. In the sand beside the driver's door, a single small footprint, perfect and deep. No other tracks.
It came for the shoe, and it stood right here, inches from where I sleep.
Patrick stood motionless, the morning sun heating the metal of the truck. He understood then what Cole had meant. The dead don't want to be disturbed. He drove to work in silence, the empty passenger seat a void. He had poked a wound in the desert, and the desert had healed itself. He bought a motion-activated trail camera and strapped it to a creosote bush overlooking the most recent circle site. No moon, no wind. At 3:14 a.m., the camera tripped. The footage showed the empty wash for 37 seconds, then a shadow slid into frame. It didn't walk. It resolved, like a shape choosing to be seen, a human silhouette without weight, the darkness between stars given posture. The shadow moved to the center of the wash, placed nothing, arranged nothing, and then dissolved. No shoes appeared. The timestamp corrupted into static. He played the file back 3 times. On the 4th attempt, the screen went black and displayed "File corrupted." The memory card was blank. The desert had erased itself. But the shadow's posture had been waiting. He'd seen a witness, not a perpetrator. He drove to Cole's house that evening, the edge of his calm worn thin. The old man was on his porch, as if expecting him.
I saw it, not the shoes. The thing that owns them. You need to tell me what happened in 1973.
You are past warnings now, aren't you?
Cole set down his coffee. His eyes held the look of a man who had been afraid for so long it had settled into bone. He nodded toward the chair beside him.
In the summer of '73, a rancher found a sinkhole out in Sector Echo. Deep, full of bones. 47 people, men, women, children.
His voice was a dry riverbed. Patrick listened without moving.
The bodies were intact except for one detail. All of them were missing their feet. No shoes were found in the grave.
Missing feet. The shoes didn't belong to them. They're an offering.
The agency panicked. They sealed the report and classified the site. They thought they buried it, but the next year, the first shoe circle appeared.
Always 47 pairs. Always vanishing by dawn, the desert wouldn't let the dead be forgotten.
The file has one handwritten note at the bottom. It says, "Let the dead mourn." That's the protocol. Mark and move on.
Disturbing the circle means taking away their only memorial. That's the retaliation.
He looked at the old man and saw not a coward, but a keeper of a sorrow too vast to police. For the first time in years, Patrick felt the weight of the starless sky not as a threat, but as a shroud over something sacred. 3 weeks later, on a moon-silvered night, the thermal optic painted the familiar ring of cold. Patrick killed the engine and stepped out without hesitation. He didn't reach for the camera. He didn't key the radio. He walked toward the circle, the way a man approaches a grave. 47 pairs, heel to toe, the sand around them mirror smooth. The night was warm, but he felt no fear.
This is the 5th time. I've counted every shoe, memorized every worn sole. Tonight, I'm not here to catalog.
He knelt at the edge, the beam of his flashlight lying across dusty trainers and work boots. The presence was there, but it didn't press. It waited.
I am sorry for taking the shoe, for not understanding sooner.
The stillness that answered was not empty. It was full of something old and patient, like the desert itself acknowledging his words. He stayed there for a long time, breathing with the silence, then rose. He marked the GPS on his handheld, the motion practiced and no longer rebellious. He drove away beneath a moon that had watched this ritual for decades, the circle already beginning its slow dissolution into memory. He knew he would never photograph it again, not out of fear, but because some grief was not his to document. That night, in the deep hollow of sleep, Patrick dreamed of the wash as it was in 1973, a line of 47 figures, barefoot, their faces worn smooth by decades of forgetting, walking into the sand without leaving a trace.
They didn't look at me. They just walked into the circle that wasn't there yet and laid down.
He woke with the number 47 tolling in his chest, a bell that would not quiet. At his desk, He pulled up the duty roster. The screen blinked. Sector Echo, next cycle, same patrol grid.
Of course, the circle will be there. It always is when I am scheduled.
He didn't feel the old dread, only the quiet weight of something he'd finally agreed to carry. The circle wasn't a mystery to be solved anymore. It was a duty, a silent contract between the living and the dead. He would drive out there tomorrow night and the night after, and for as long as the agency gave him the keys, the desert would show him what it needed to. He would mark the GPS, and the dead would keep their shoes. Years hardened the lines around Patrick's eyes. He was senior agent now, the voice on the other end of the line for the next patrol. A rookie agent's hysterical voice crackled through the radio. "Dispatch, I have. A circle of shoes in a wash. 47 pairs, no tracks. I need backup." Patrick's hand moved to the mic. The phrase was there before his thoughts formed it.
Mark the GPS coordinates. Do not collect the shoes. Continue your patrol.
The rookie's protest came back garbled, words tumbling over disbelief. Patrick heard himself in the static.
That's an order. He'll mark the GPS. He'll drive on. He'll spend years trying to understand. And eventually, he'll stop asking.
The radio went quiet. Patrick sat back, the weight of the secret now his to pass down. He stared at the blank screen, where his own photos had lived for years. He had deleted them long ago. The circle would be empty by dawn. The rookie would learn. The desert kept its dead, and Patrick Reeves kept the silence. Patrick Reeves retired to a small house at the edge of the sector, the porch facing the desert he'd patrolled for 32 years. He never told his wife or his son about the circles. The secret lived in the hollow of his chest, silent as a buried file. That evening, the local paper had a half-column story. 5 missing in Sector Echo, no leads.
They won't find them. Not out there. The desert takes and the desert remembers.
He folded the paper and watched the first stars pierce the dusk. Somewhere beyond the ridge, the wash lay empty and waiting. That night, in a wash, a rookie would cross at 2:14 a.m. 47 pairs of shoes materialized in a perfect circle. A young agent keyed his radio and spoke the words he'd been told. "Mark the GPS. Do not collect. Continue patrol." Neither the rookie nor the supervisor questioned the order. The file was sealed, the note unchanged. By dawn, the wash was pristine. The shoes had dissolved into the same silence that had held them since 1973. Patrick looked up at the same moon, knowing exactly where the circle had been, and said nothing. The first circle appeared in 1974, in a wash that had been empty the night before. A junior agent found it, radioed in, and received the words that would become scripture. "Mark the GPS. Do not collect. Continue patrol." In 1989, a different wash held the same 47 pairs, arranged with identical care. The agent who marked that GPS had never heard of the first. The protocol had erased its own origin. Decades folded into each other. The shoes returned in different washes, always 47, always vanishing. Mark the GPS. Do not collect. Continue patrol. Generations of agents learned the unwritten rule. Never touch, never photograph, never question. The silence that had held the dead since 1973 became the only record, and somewhere in that vast, patient dark, 47 pairs of shoes waited for the next 2:14 a.m. In 2001, after a decade of drought, the shoes appeared in a wash that had been bone dry for years. A new agent, barely 3 months on the line, found them at 2:14 a.m. His voice cracked on the radio. "Dispatch, I have. A circle of shoes, 47 pairs, no tracks." The response was immediate. The words worn smooth by decades of use. "Mark the GPS. Do not collect. Continue patrol." The new agent hesitated, his training warring with the order. Then, he clicked off the mic. He would learn. By dawn, the wash was pristine. The shoes had dissolved into the same silence that held them every time, miles away. Patrick Reeves stirred in his sleep. The dream of barefoot walkers had faded, but the number remained.
47.
He whispered it into the dark, and the dark did not answer. The moon continued its arc, watching the place where the circle would always be again. On a moonless night, in a wash no one had charted, 47 pairs of shoes materialized with no sound and no witness. A young agent found them at 2:14 a.m. He didn't question the order when it came. The words were already in his mouth. Mark the GPS. Do not collect. Continue patrol. He marked the coordinates and drove on. The secret passed from one decade to the next, as silent as the dead themselves. Far away, on a porch that had weathered 30 years of sun, Patrick Reeves sat with his eyes closed.
47.
He knew the circle was there, on the other side of the ridge, settling into the sand like a prayer left unanswered. By dawn, the wash was empty. The shoes had returned to the silence that held them, and the new agent would never speak of it. The file remained sealed. The note at the bottom, in faded ink, still read, "Let the dead mourn." And somewhere in the desert, under a moon that had watched it all, 47 pairs of shoes waited for the next 2:14 a.m. The next 2:14 a.m. arrived under a moon thin as a splinter of bone. In a wash that had no name, a cold signature bloomed on a thermal screen. A young agent stepped out, flashlight sweeping the sand. The circle was precise. 47 pairs, heel to toe. The ground immaculate. Dispatch. I have a circle of shoes. 47 pairs, no tracks. The reply was immediate. The words hollowed by decades. Mark the GPS. Do not collect. Continue patrol. The new agent marked the coordinates, his fingers moving without thought. The secret had already claimed him. By dawn, the wash was pristine. Not a grain of sand disturbed. The shoes had dissolved into the same silence that held them every time. Miles away, Patrick Reeves opened his eyes on the porch, the dream of barefoot walkers fading like morning fog.
They're still out there. The dead, the shoes, the silence. It will never end.
The file remained sealed. The handwritten note at the bottom, "Let the dead mourn," had faded, but its weight had not. And in the desert that gave nothing back, the next circle was already forming under the cold light of a moon that would never speak, in a year that would be forgotten. In a wash that had no name, the thermal screen lit up with 47 cold points. A new name answered the radio, a voice as young as Patrick's had been. The words were the same. Mark the GPS. Do not collect. Continue patrol. The agent complied, the motion now muscle memory for the entire sector. The secret had become procedure. By sunrise, the wash was empty again. The sand held no memory, yet the circle was carved into the desert's soul, miles away. On a porch that had seen 1,000 dawns, Patrick Reeves was no longer there. But his rocking chair still faced the desert. The file in the station basement gathered dust. The handwritten note, "Let the dead mourn," had grown so faint it was almost a prayer. And somewhere in the vast, patient desert, 47 pairs of shoes waited under the same cold moon for the next agent, the next 2:14 a.m. The circle never stopped. The shoes never grew old, and the silence never broke. In the borderlands, some grief was too vast to be solved, too human to be forgotten. It could only be witnessed, marked, and quietly, faithfully let go. The sun rose. Another agent clocked out. Another took the truck. The GPS marked a point that would be empty by noon. The file stayed sealed. The note stayed unread by anyone who mattered. The circle stayed 47, and somewhere in the vast, patient dark, the shoes materialized again. No sound, no footprints, no witnesses. A new thermal optic caught the cold ring. A new voice spoke the words without question. The protocol had become as natural as breathing. The dead were not a mystery. They were a condition of the desert. When the last agent who remembered the first file retired, the secret did not die. It had never been alive. It was simply there, like the mountains, like the moon, like the ache in an old man's chest when he looked east. The desert took everything, eventually, but it gave one thing back, a circle of 47 pairs of shoes, again and again and again. A border is a line. A circle has no end. Mark the GPS. Do not collect. Continue patrol. The moon crossed the ridge, and the sand cooled. No one saw the shoes appear, and no one saw them leave. The border shifted over the decades, but the circle remained, a fixed point in a landscape of forgetting. New agents came with new equipment, but the protocol never changed. The words were carved into the rhythm of the patrol. They never questioned it. The silence was too heavy, and the desert gave no answers. Sometimes, a new agent would dream of barefoot walkers. They would wake with the number 47 on their lips and never speak of it. The old file gathered dust in a basement that no one visited. The note faded until even the last letter was gone. Yet every 2:14 a.m., in a wash that had no name, the circle returned, 47 pairs, heel to toe, immaculate. And somewhere, a voice came through the static, empty of curiosity, heavy with years. Mark the GPS. Do not collect. The transmission ended, and the desert folded itself back into silence. The shoes waited. The moon watched. The circle had no end.